Welcome back to the Morning Movement Show. I'm your host, Sarah Joy Gaines, and I am joined today in conversation with Emily Chertow, founder of Journaling Classes. Let's give it up for Emily, everybody.
Yeah. Thanks, Sarah. I'm so happy to be here.
I am so happy you're here, and I'm so happy you're here for a number of reasons, but I guess to really anchor us, I'll share that journaling for me has been such a pivotal practice throughout honestly my whole life. Like when I think back, I've always had a journal. I've found journals as early as like 4 or 5 years old. I was like writing about how cute hockey players were.
Your crush list.
Total crush list, hockey players. But, but journaling has such a powerful means of self-exploration and learning and discovery. So I'm so happy you're here to share your wisdom, share your magic. But before we get into that, I want to ask you, what is your first memory of movement?
Oh, I love that question, Sarah. And when you ask me that, my mind goes to growing up. My mom, in our home, there was always music playing. Specifically 80s rock.
Nice.
And so what I loved about growing up was my mom always had a home cooked dinner for us. And we couldn't leave the table until we finished our glass of milk. And then it was on us also to like vacuum and wipe down the table. Of course, we love chores.
Yep.
But my mom would blast AC/DC and we would just shake our butts in the kitchen listening to AC/DC and dancing in our kitchen.
Amazing.
And music with the windows down as we were driving, listening to like Bruce Springsteen and music like that. It was integrated into my life really early because of my mom's lovely taste in music.
Amazing. I love that. And I also love the integration of music and a little bit of movement into chores, which might seemingly be, boring or monotonous, especially as a kid. I personally love now. I'm a huge fan putting on music. Rubber gloves get me in the kitchen with music on, and I'm like having the time of my life.
No, it's fun.
I don't know if
we have fun with it now.
Totally.
I've actually it's complemented my life today. Every morning I like to turn on Leon Bridges, like the Coming Home album, and I just sway in my home as I reset my space. And my mom made cleaning fun. Who would have thought?
I love that.
With movement and music.
So good. And then, so tell us about your journaling practice today and your own personal journaling practice, because of course you host these amazing events where you gather people to journal together. I saw you have an upcoming journaling with a live harp. I know you do journaling with Jazz in the Park, just these beautiful experiences.
Thank you.
First,
yes,
tell us about your own practice and how that led you to where you are today.
Yeah, this business, this community I've built is so personal to me. Journaling is something that has helped me process all of my emotions, feel my feelings, and come to almost all of my decisions. And yeah, similar to what you said, I go back and I look at my old journals and I have my crush list. I had, oh my gosh, Becky and Samantha, they were in a fight today about Josh. And that's the stuff that still is, you're talking about and documenting the season of life and the things that are happening. But my journaling practice today allows me to anchor into finding and leaning into my true self. And so whether it is a to-do list, a gratitude list, those are two things that are journaling to me in my daily practices. But I turn to my journal today as a way of continuously bettering and taking care of myself. But I'm human too. So while accessibility and daily practices and habits and creating it as something that you do daily is really important, like I said, I'm human too. And there's periods where I'm not journaling. And I give myself grace and permission to know that that's okay and that's what I need at that time. So no, I have not journaled yet today, and that's okay. But then there's other mornings where the daily practice of journaling is so routine and so instrumental.
Absolutely. And I appreciate you naming like, no, hands up, like I did not journal today, because I think there's often this pressure or maybe a perceived pressure. We hear this a lot with, wellness tips and tactics of, this set routine that has to happen every single day. And it can end up feeling more stressful than actually supportive. And so
I think social media and society makes us feel like we have to be perfect if we try something new. And I'm here, especially in the practices of play, creativity, and joy, anchored into mindfulness and self-care, to keep it accessible, to keep it playful, and to lean into our messiness. I always joke I'm a recovering perfectionist and a recovering people pleaser. And so everything that I instruct and hold space for is allowing us to just let it rip and do it in a non-judgmental way. So the practice doesn't have to be perfect. All you have to do is just show up on the page.
Right, and that's the whole essence of the practice.
Right.
Whether that's journaling, moving, anything at all.
Yeah.
I also appreciate you naming, right, all these different forms that journaling can take, because I remember having a really clear moment mid-ish 20s, and I realized that I was only journaling when things were hard. And I would look back in my journal, and I had a journal that literally spanned from 8 years old to my mid-20s. But it was only these pockets of time when things were hard. And I looked back at that, and I had this clear moment of, I want to start journaling when things are good. I want to be able to look back in my journal and reflect on all the good things that are happening as well.
And I think it's beautiful. I think that is a common thing. When the ship is sinking, people turn to as anything they can to help themselves. And that's why journaling exists. It's a great tool. But the more we do it, the better we get. So you can't expect yourself to go to a yoga class or a meditation workshop and be good at that practice. The more you do it, the better you get.
And what is good?
Yeah, what is good? We don't, we there's no such thing here with that. But I think a great thing to turn to is, again, making it a practice and having it be a place where you can celebrate and express joy and express love in your journal, and you're not just leaning into it when kind of it hits the fan.
So beautifully said.
Thank you.
And you guide people through that experience.
Yeah.
So how did that come to be?
I'm so passionate. Like I said, journaling is so personal for me, and I'm passionate about it. And I want to, when I'm passionate about something, I want to spread it to as many people as I can. Yeah. And I think I have seen the tools and the power of journaling change my life, save my life. Yeah. And I know I have a lot of nuggets and tools that I can give to others that can help them be impacted in the same ways.
Give us the nuggets.
Yeah, we got so many nuggets. But what
it's a 12-pack.
What I love about journaling classes is you're able to show up in my spaces and in any state of being, be seen, loved, supported. And I joke I'm like an expert hand holder. In my workshops, I have different like types of programming and flows and experiences, but I really have crafted like a Bible of prompts that I believe in, that I've seen work, that I've workshopped, that are centered in mindfulness and self-care. And I love instructing them, and we're lifting up the hood, and then we're really digging in. Right. My prompts aren't just, how are you feeling today? Or give me 3 things you're grateful for, which are all great questions and prompts. But when you show up into journaling classes, we look a little bit deeper and dig more into themes around those higher level topics.
And how do you see the difference or the impact of journaling individually versus journaling in community?
I think, well, I really believe vulnerability creates room for connection. Yeah. And we are all so deserving of connection, especially right here. Wherever you are joining us from, we're in New York. And I think New York is this hustling and bustling place. And while we're surrounded by so many people, it can also be the loneliest, most isolating place to exist. Right. And so we show up in community, we get connection. And when we're in community journaling, doing something collectively as one, but independently in your journal is really powerful. And that's then what's really juicy about journaling classes is we open up the space for fellowship, community, dialogue, conversation. And in those moments where we open up in conversation, we're closing that gap in the loneliness epidemic that we're in. It's giving us an opportunity to be like, whoa, you're having that thought? So am I. Right. And it's making us feel less alone. Or someone will share something and someone else will hear it and is like, I'm mind blown by that. I've never had that thought and I needed that today. And so when we collectively do something together, but have our own experiences and then get to lift one another up by way of sharing, it allows us to get more grounded.
The grounded piece, I love that. It's like we rise, but then we root.
Yeah.
And, it makes me think of Bell Hooks. there's one of the books that Bell Hooks wrote, a teaching critical thinking book. And Bell Hooks write that dialogue is one of the most powerful tools of transmission of education and transmission of knowledge.
I always say journaling is any place that you give yourself permission to take what's going on in here in your head and down here in your heart and getting it outside of yourself. Right. And then what's even more powerful with journaling classes and in general, I talk to myself all the time. I think it's a really great thing.
Wait, can I interrupt you really quick? This morning as I was getting ready in the locker room, the woman next to me turned, she's like, "Are you whispering sweet nothings to yourself?" I was like, was I doing that out loud?
We love getting caught in the act, like, absolutely. And so I'm always talking to myself. I'm always yapping away. But when we take what's going on in our head and our heart, put it on the page, that's journaling. But also the Scary Notes app, even a voice message, a grocery list, to-do list, that is journaling.
Right.
But what I really believe where the healing, the processing happens is when we take what happens on the page and literally use our throat chakras, our voices, to speak it out loud and give it life and love and energy. Yeah. That's where the magic happens.
Totally. I feel like that's that in both the expressing something that might feel really tender and vulnerable, and maybe even painful, and also in the expressing of something like a dream or a vision that you're wanting to create in the world, which is also vulnerable to share. So it really goes both ways.
We love sitting in the place of discomfort. And I always invite in, it's important for me to create safe spaces so that you feel and you know you're safe enough to step out of your comfort zone. Right. And I think even if we just take if we just dip our toe in the outside of our comfort zone, that's when we get to know ourselves better.
Absolutely. And I think too, what's coming to mind is there's something about the practice of journaling, which is bringing you into a more familiar state with yourself, your thoughts, your feelings, your inner being, which then in turn grounds you more in yourself to then show up more fully as yourself to other people.
Yeah, I
think
so
the connection really goes both ways.
Yeah, it absolutely unlocks your authentic self when you put pen to paper. Yeah. And when you are taking care of yourself by way of journaling, it, like you just said, allows you to show up presently, grounded, and authentically with others.
Right. When did you know that this was something that you wanted to do with other people?
Yeah. When I went to college at Penn State, which was a great time, I had a lot of fun, guys. I had a lot of fun. And in that time, I got so swept up in extracurriculars, being joining clubs, being a leader in the club. And then I also got super swept up in college life, going out, partying. And while I loved to have a good time like that, I felt like I lost touch of who I was. And at Penn State, it's a huge party school, good time. I was finding myself going to the record store, the bookstore, the coffee shop, and my friends were like, "What are you doing on a Saturday morning doing that?" And that's where I felt my highest, best self. It's where I felt most safe and comfortable. And so I moved to New York, and I was in a grad program around a bunch of nerds that like to read and write like myself. Right. But I still was like, why do I feel so isolated and so alone? And so with that, I wanted to create spaces that I would want to exist in. And so whether that was going back to my college to host workshops for the students because I wanted to create spaces for them in the way that I didn't have, or in parks in New York, I knew that when we show up together in a place where you don't have to drink, where you can show up alone, that real rich community could be built. And yeah, journaling is something that is typically done very privately, at home, intimately. But I think there's a lot of power in showing up and doing these acts together. And I think a lot of people, this started over 6 years ago now, and so many people were always so curious about what I was sharing about my anxiety or sharing about, I would post a lot of times in a coffee shop, and to some, that's uncommon and not a natural thing, but that is just all I knew. And so I wanted to be able to create a space where everyone's welcome and kind of show them that they belong here too with it.
Absolutely. I hear and feel so many parallels with what you're sharing with journaling and journaling classes and what I share and create with Joy Flow. And even in terms of the power of, there's so much power in being with yourself, moving, by yourself, but then showing up and doing it with others. I mean, we experienced it here today. And I'd love for you to speak to a little bit of like the collective energy that you experience.
I literally was about to say collective energy. That's where the magic happens.
Yeah.
I love a circle.
We love a circle. Absolutely.
I love a ceremony.
We started with a circle.
Yeah.
Okay, before we rolled, we were in a circle.
There is a lot of power and magic and juice when you come together and create that collective energy.
Yeah.
And I think right now, more than ever, creating those spaces, expressing joy, holding spaces of safety is more necessary than ever. It's actually the greatest act of resistance.
Yep.
And when we gather in these ways, we are healing, and we're putting that energy out into the world, and it's making it a better place. Right. So we're taking care of ourselves, which is the most important thing. Mm-hmm. But I also think that when we show up together, there is, I don't know the word I'm looking for, but the ripple effect. Yeah. The ripple effect of when you have this collective energy, you're going to feel it. And then we're going to step out of this room today, this show this morning, and other people are going to feel the energy that we've created this morning as well.
Right. Absolutely. Spreading joy from New York out into the rest of the world. That's the goal. We need it. I've been saying a lot. I've been noticing myself say a lot at the end of my classes recently, in that moment of stillness at the end, of just a moment of gratitude for showing up for yourself, and then recognizing how you showing up for yourself helps to co-create the space where other people get to show up too.
Absolutely. That's like the first thing I lead with when we anchor into the beginning of our workshops of, actually, let's give a round of applause for simply showing up today.
Can we do that right now?
Yeah.
Just a round of applause. You're here, you're at home.
Yeah, you did the hardest thing, which is show up. The bravest, hardest thing is getting there, getting through the door sometimes.
It really is, and it can feel like you know that you want to get there, and you're like, oh, I'm going to do it, but then it's just like, oh, well, it's easier if I just kind of hang back here.
And you're never, I feel like, you're never mad when you show up. Like,
no.
If anything, I beat myself up where I say, I do think, though, something I've learned in my womanhood is I don't have to accept an invitation. And sometimes it's really empowering for me to say no. So when I say no, I'm often happy. But there are times where I'm like, I don't feel like it. But then I still go. I'm always glad that I did.
Totally. Do you know what this makes me think of? And this will circle back because you started off with talking about your mom. My mom, do you remember there was was it Mad TV? I think a very famous skit of the, can I get your number? Does anyone remember this? So my mom would practice with me of saying, she would like repeat of like, can I get your number? And I was supposed to say no. It was like for me to start practicing, no, you don't have to give out your number.
I love that. Yeah, it's empowering to say no.
Totally. And
it's
we
an
have
act
to say
of choice.
We have to say no.
It's a healthy thing. When we say no, it's helping others as well.
Right. Choosing what we let in and what we let out. Don't let in. So as we start to just come to the end of this conversation, I'm so happy you're here again, just journaling. Too. It's so powerful and expansive. How can people connect with you? What do you have coming up that you're excited for and want to invite people into? Share with us a little bit about that.
Yeah, I always say wherever I am, you are always welcome to be. You will always have room for you. I host mindful mornings every other Wednesday virtually. They're free and accessible, 8:30 to 9 a.m. Awesome. I also am now hosting every Thursday in-person mindful mornings. So we love that experience. But if you follow me on Instagram, journaling classes, don't know how I snagged that tag, but it's at journaling classes. That is a great way to connect. I send a lovely newsletter also twice a month that has different prompts and my events that are happening. But just say hello on Instagram.
It's so lovely. I love receiving your newsletter. Last week or last month, you shared a playlist that I tap into still. It's just great.
That makes me so happy.
Yeah,
Thank you.
Really goes a long way.
It's a great way of expression for myself.
Totally.
And so my core offerings are workshops and different events, but my background is journalism, and so I love opportunities where I give myself permission to write and share it with other people.
So good. Yeah. So good. Well, I want to ask our audience if we might have a question for our fabulous guest. Yeah.
Question. Such a lovely conversation first. My question for you is, for someone who wants to get into a daily practice of journaling, where would you recommend starting, and what are a prompt or two that you love for like a daily journaling without perfection? But if you were to journal daily, where would you tell them to start?
I love that question. Two things come to mind. First is it doesn't have to be a pretty practice at first. All you need is a notepad, something to write on, and something to write with. I do love treating myself to a nice journal and a nice pen, but it doesn't have to be that complex or deep. Just show up on the page. A napkin
at a restaurant.
The notes app even. And so just give yourself 2 minutes to show up for yourself on the page. And a prompt that I really like inviting in is gratitude. I really lean into gratitude, and people are like, oh, gratitude, blah, blah, blah. But it works. Practice gratitude. It will change your life. Yeah. And so something, especially for me, when I'm in the trenches, I pull out a mini journal and I keep it on my nightstand. And every night before bed, I write 3 things I'm grateful for. And I always date the page, which is really important. And then I'll list out 3 things I'm grateful for in that day. And then what evolves to happen, which is really cool, is it documents that season of life. So you're not just expressing gratitude and it makes you feel grounded and present and better, but it's also documenting the things that are happening in that day. And that has been really cool to reflect back on too. So just starting with some gratitude.
Becomes like a time capsule.
Yeah, exactly.
Love that.
Yeah. Thanks for the question.
Yeah. Thank you so much. Yeah. Well, Emily, a total pleasure to have you on the Morning Movement Show. Thank you so much for joining us. Can we give it up one more time for our beautiful, fabulous, inspiring guest?
Thanks for having me, Sarah.
Thank you so much for being here. Connect with Emily at Journaling Classes on Instagram. Find her online, in the park, all the things here in New York City. My name's Sarah Joy Gaines. I am your host. This is the Morning Movement Show. We'll see you next week. We have Keone Hudoba, who will be our guest. See you then.